Hey, my name is Neil.
And my name's David.
You're not film critics. In this week's episode, we are discussing about the, not so new Rutherford Falls, created by Ed Helms and the legendary TV sitcom creator Michael Schur. So, David, before we go into the first impressions, did you have any expectations coming into the show?
Actually, no. I actually had no idea what the show is about. I went in completely blind. Usually before most shows, I like to get at least like a bit of a general sense of what the show is going to be about. Like who are the cast members, what is the characters, basically like not what's going to happen, but like the premise, right? I want to know the premise of stuff before I get into it, as well as how many episodes and how many seasons and blah blah blah. But all I knew about this is that it had like this was a Michael Schur show, and that it had Ed Helms in it because I saw like 3 seconds of a trailer. That's it. That's all I knew about this, and so I expect to be kind of like a sitcom, right? Like a bit funny, a bit sad. Sometimes they have good characters. That's all I pretty much expect. It wasn't high expectations. If this was a dumpster fire, I wouldn't exactly be crying. But for this, went in relatively blind. What about you, Neil?
Yeah, you mentioned earlier, I noticed it too. It was a Michael Schur show, and seeing Ed Helms and knowing, his background in movies and shows, being a more comedic guy, I thought it would be not to say it's not a comedy show. I thought it'd be like a sitcom, like his past shows like Brooklyn Nine-Nine or The Office or The Good Place, but I was totally wrong. I was totally wrong. So David, first impressions.
So, first impressions of the show, I liked it. There are a lot of good things the show does. There's also a lot of stuff that like could be done better. But I feel like that's with a lot of Michael Schur shows. A lot of the first season of it is a lot of setup. And this definitely feels like a lot of setup because they're setting up the characters, their motivations, who they are, what their journey is going to be throughout the show. And it definitely needs a second season. I think it's already been confirmed for one. I don't know for sure. Um, and like you can definitely tell that sometimes it suffers from being so much setup, but it still is like it still has good characters. It's occasionally funny. It's less funny than other Michael Schur shows like The Office or Brooklyn Nine-Nine or The Good Place, but it still definitely has the comedic aspect. Um, and yeah, it's a good show. It discusses a lot of interesting concepts, and it's a show that features a lot of indigenous voices, not only as like the writers, but also as the actors in the show, and they're actual indigenous people, and they actually had like real input on the series, like episode to episode. It wasn't just like a consultant at the end, and you can really tell as the Minneshanka nation, they feel authentic, and they feel like a real indigenous like a community, and they don't just and like a modern indigenous community, and they don't just feel how often indigenous people are portrayed in TV shows, but whether it's like just one character, or like they're like way off from what is it their was it their original nation, or that they're like they're super like cultural and like super focused on their heritage. Like it's a generally it's genuinely like a huge variety of indigenous characters. I think that's not something you see on a TV show a lot, and I really want to commend the show for that. And I looked after the show was done. I wanted to see if like any indigenous people, for I'm not indigenous. I don't know like what is good and what is not good representation. I looked after it, and most indigenous people are saying that this is good representation, and so I really want to celebrate this show for that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, definitely kudos to Rutherford Falls, the producer and the writer for that. I felt as well, because usually when it comes to, indigenous, I'm not indigenous as well, but when it comes to indigenous representation, a lot of it is just by assumption, right? A lot of it is just, this what happened in the past and whatnot. But I think the show does a great job in representing what's actually happening in the present, right? To focus on that. And aside from that, I think what made me really like the show was it actually had the very solid storyline. A lot of Michael Schur shows, they're sitcoms, and most of the time they're just they just they're just for comedy purposes. But the show actually had a very solid storyline throughout, throughout each episode and throughout the whole first season. As there's for not right now, there's only one season, and it was different. I really like that. Uh, as you said, the characters. Michael Schur, he has great characters in his in the shows that he produced, and yeah, I really like the characters in here, but some of the dialogue I felt, I guess it was sort of, I guess, the delivery of the actors. Um, I thought it was just a little, I guess, out of place at times, where sometimes it'd be like such a sudden switch in atmosphere or in tone of the characters. They'd be serious at one point, and then right next, like 5 seconds later, they try to be comedic. That's definitely something they could improve on. If they do extend the show into further, into more, I guess, more seasons. That's definitely something they can improve on. And other than that, I think it was a well-rounded show.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. Sometimes it would flip flop a lot from being like a very emotional show with like the characters like in their character arcs to being like all of a sudden like it's suddenly comedy for some reason that flips back quickly. Um, but yeah, I think it generally integrates the comedy well. My favorite character in the show by far is probably Ed Helms' character, probably because he's such like this happens with a lot of Michael Schur's characters. They're like lovable idiots. Like like they're like whatever. Like most of the time, what they're doing is wrong, and they're really selfish, and but you know that they're going to grow, and you know that even if they are an idiot, they're a lovable idiot because they are their heart's like always in the right place. They're never trying to be intentionally cruel, and I think that helps a lot of his characters like relate to the audience. And Ed Helms' character definitely wasn't relatable for me. I definitely didn't feel like attached to him or anything. But he definitely represents kind of like an ignorance of a lot of people with when it comes to indigenous issues. And I feel like he really well embodied that, and he changed by like not he didn't change all the way. He's still very much a Rutherford, right? He still wants to keep his history museum and everything. He doesn't change all the way, but he does. He does he does alter his perspective. I think he alters his perspective because of what the indigenous people around him tell him, and I think that's a really interesting dynamic to like be the centerpiece of a show.
Yeah, for sure. I when I was while I was watching episodes, and then I think kudos to the writers for this. They did a really great job in in satire. There was a part where it said Ed Elms's character, I forgot his name, Nathan. He was like, "Oh, you're gonna let me live in my house under your what? You're gonna let me live in my house under your terms." I thought that was pretty funny because everybody knows that's the unfortunate truth that happened with the indigenous history
Yeah,
in not only in the Americas but around the world
yeah,
as well.
Canada as well.
So David, do you want to get into, I guess, dissecting each episode or each part of the season?
I think this is a good time for that. Yeah,
All right,
sure.
so I guess let's do the pilot episode.
Um, well, the pilot, like, I feel like it sets up a really good base for the series because it introduces like this the center conflict right away, and I feel like it contains a lot. Usually, some pilots are pretty slow to get off the ground, but this one gets into it right away. It has the big explosive moment at the end with Nathan's angry speech, and it also has what is it like some intrigue for the future with Terry's like plan of like Operation Running Lightning or something, and that was I really like the whole dynamic the episode had going. I think the conversation around like statues of historical figures that were pretty like terrible people is an interesting conversation, and I think that it's a conversation that I think we all need to have with like not only like ourselves, also with indigenous communities, with communities like that were possibly oppressed, like were that possibly that were oppressed by these people that like we put up statues that we glorify, and I think we have to take into account of who do we glorify? Who do we put up statues of? Who do we decide this is a person we should like learn from? This is a person we should put up like a gold statue of, and this is a person we should subjugate, and this is a person we should ignore, and they're just kind of a footnote in the historical textbooks. And I think that's a really good conversation for the show because this conversation was happening before the show started, you know. But I feel like the show is also really good at channeling what that conversation is.
Right. Kudos to the writers for, I guess, put integrating this into the show. You know, having that, in part of history. Usually, what you learn in the history book are the things that people want you to learn. Right. What the school wants you to learn. It's true, but it's not the full truth. Right. And I think the show does I guess a pretty good job in representing that some truths, so the informations are true, but it's not the whole truth, right? And later we see that later into the show when it's revealed that Lawrence Rutherford, a spoiler alert, but Lawrence Rutherford, the very person that Nathan looks up to, the very, I guess, ancestor that he loved, was really not the greatest person. He thought he was a great person helping the indigenous people with the trade treaties and with the land, um, making combining them together. I guess having Rutherford Falls, both for Rutherfords and indigenous Minneshankans. And then it turns out, it was literally revealed that a folklore was made out of, the character he is, which was Malmer. That I think that's I guess again that shows history. History is true, right? But you gotta look at the overall truth of history to understand what really happened, and to not have these biases in our minds, and then that's how prejudice and racism and
Definitely,
hatred
yeah.
starts,
History
right?
is written by the people in power, and the people in power can shape the narrative how they want. I think that's important to look at when you're looking at any time in history, whether it be now, 200 years ago, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, you know? I think it's important to look at.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Wow. This show is, you look at this show on the surface. It's comical. It's funny. It's good. It has a good story. And then you dissect it. If you dissect deeper into it, and then it reveals, you know, significant things that can be related into our lives, right?
Yeah.
To
What did
everyone's
you
lives.
Mm-hmm. What did you think of the second episode, Buckhart Lodge?
Actually, I think it was better than the pilot. The pilot was great. It sets it up, and then the Buckhart Lodge, it feeds off of the first episode, and then it sets up even more for the upcoming episodes. I thought it was kind of like it was like there was I think it was the was this the episode where they had they revealed, well, not fully revealed, but when they, I guess, showed more of the
Yeah, it's
Operation
where they
Lightning.
reveal. It's where they reveal the was it the Running Lightning?
Yeah,
The
sorry.
program is when they're suing Nathan
Yeah,
Rutherford.
yeah, exactly. I like that. The ending of the episode was great because it sets up for the next episode. It happens a lot with this show, actually. The earlier half feeds off of what happened the episode before, and then the middle half would be, I guess, character development, story development, and then the latter half would set up what would happen into the next episode. And so you'd be intrigued with what's happening, and um you'd want to know what happened next. And I think episode 2 did a really great job in that, as well as the next few episodes after it. And yeah, it was really, I guess, refreshing to know that this isn't just a sitcom show. It has very good storyline that you always want to come back to and watch.
Yeah, it definitely gives you incentive to keep watching. My personal take on the second episode, I don't know if I like it more than pilot, but it's very different than the pilot in some ways. I really like the whole scene with the what is it the podcast guy who's like he he makes like incredibly racist comments, and then he's like, "Oh, you gotta edit those. You can't put that out in the air." And then he just keeps like running along like nothing is like it's completely fine, and they get into a fight, and I thought that was really funny. I thought like as well as being like something like because a lot as well as being like like a relevant issue, it's also very funny, and I thought the second episode was really successful in what it tried to do.
Right, now let's move on to the third episode.
For me, the third episode was kind of a transition episode. It was kind of like episode where like nothing much happened, but it did set up the next episode. And I feel like maybe it should have had its own little plot to carry on, but it did fill out its time anyway, and maybe it like dragged for a bit because there's like so little happening like in the episode for most of the time. But yeah, I think it builds a lot. It's just trying to build character, and that's fine. You have to obviously have time to build character, but I feel like the story could have been happening at the same time.
Right, that's what I thought as well. Yeah, that's what I thought as well. I think it'd be I guess the term I'd use if it were because usually full 22 episode shows they typically have filler episodes, and I think this would be, I guess I don't want to say it's a filler episode because the episode 3 did have significant I guess not character growth, but I guess it reveals to the audience of what the type what type of characters are, what type of characters are each characters, their personality and stuff like that. But yeah, again, I it was fun to watch though. It was fun to watch nonetheless. But it could have, I guess the story could have kept going, even if they had they had fun little sequences. Terry Thomas, I think episode 4 was the best, not the best episode, but the best executed episode. You know, the episode is focused on one person. Terry Thomas was, obviously the, I guess you'd say, the antagonist of the show. It showed his background a little bit, and then later on it showed how his life is going. I think it was greatly executed. Feeding off of, I guess, the what happened with episode 3. It shows you the type of people are what type of people are the characters, and this episode just shows Terry, his personality. Although he's very, I guess, antagonistic. He's only doing it really for his people. For the Minneshankans. For better life for them, for because he's a family man as well, right? He cares for his family, and then I think that does a great job. It was, again, another episode that was really fun to watch. But again, I wish the, I guess, the story could have played more, or not played more, but the story could have kept going in this episode as well.
Yeah, for me personally, I didn't really have like any problems with this episode. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite episodes. That probably comes later in the series, but I feel like Terry Thomas really solidifies the character of Terry as like an actual like fully realized character, and his speech to like, was it to Josh, where he talks about power and money, and like Josh tried to as try to like put him into a corner with the, is capitalism at odds with your cultural values, and he takes him and he basically eviscerates him with words, and then right after he goes back to the normal smiley Terry. That's like an amazing scene. I love that so much. I love when characters can just like have a switch in them and they just go like absolute like savage for 3 seconds, and they turn it back and they turn off, and they're absolutely like, they're fine and they're all cheery again. I love it. I love like how he is able to do that, and how it like it's sure it's a bit played for laughs, but also you feel very intimidated while he's talking. At least I did.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now, episode 5.
For me, I think episode 5 is probably my second favorite episode. I think it's my second favorite episode because like it while it is kind of like a bottle episode, like it like takes place in basically one place, and they're doing something kind of unrelated from the previous plot. Um the two characters, Nathan and Reagan, they're judging like a school fair, and they have a lot to talk about there, and it brings up a lot of interesting conversations about like cultural appropriation, and like how how often like inoffensive things they can like say, they can often they say the least, because sometimes you have to go there, you have to you have to try to like say something daring in order to actually say something important, say something meaningful. And I feel like it brings up really bunch of interesting conversations, and it's a funny episode. Because like they're watching all the things, and then like the one with all like the women, and like the thing with the painting with all the women, and like I think it has Ariana Grande on it like 3 times or something. That was pretty funny. And then how Bobby's what is it, his video was like completely like nonsensical. It didn't make any sense at all, and they were like, what is happening? Like it was a very funny episode, but it also brought up like important cultural issues, and I feel like that it struck a good balance. I feel like this is one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah, exactly. Same as well. I thought the episode was hilarious, and then it again, as you said, it brought up, I guess, issues that have happened in the past, and I guess that'll hopefully not continue happening in the future. And it has a good balance of, I guess, seriousness and then in comedy with because if you just, I guess, you take out the comedy stuff out of that episode, that it'd be a very serious episode, right? It'd be very deep. Then you add in, I guess, the comedy in it, and then it just balances out. It's just, it was enjoyable to watch for sure.
What did you think of the 6th episode, negotiations?
Now, 6th episode, I think this was probably my favorite episode. Oh, sorry, maybe. Okay, okay, hold on. I'll probably have to go through all 10 first before I say my favorite. But I really like this episode. It was funny as well. It was really funny, especially when the lawyer and Terry just crushes him, right, with the whole the Skittles analogy, and he's like, "Oh, this is what we have," and then he just like throws it out. He's like, "Look, what you're offering me is not enough to. It's not enough, right? What happened and what's happening is not wrong, and then 3 million is not enough." And it was funny, and I th- I, I want to say this would be, I guess, probably not, but this is probably this episode and the next episode, episode 7, were probably, I guess, the climax of the show. Cause from then on you'd see significant, I guess, I don't want to say drop, but significant
Like it's not
falling action.
decreasing quality. Yeah, it's falling
Yeah,
action.
exactly.
For me, the 6th episode is definitely, I think, my favorite episode, because the A plot, with what is it, with Terry and the lawyer, and what is it, Nathan? Like they're all like they're, what is it, like the lawyer who shows up, he's all confident, he's all like like he's trying to be like put at this air of like oh, I know what I'm doing, and then he gets to Terry, and Terry eviscerates him on the spot, and he sends him crying. That's the funniest thing. And then like that, not only is that part really funny, but it's also it also shows that Terry, he's ambitious, and he has like he's not like satisfied with like he's not like a fool. He's not going to be fooled like like the company tried to like get him, right. So instead he's going to actually like try to like he's trying to like get the company to actually take him seriously, and they do take him seriously now that he's like taken out their first lawyer. And then the B plot of the episode, where Reagan finds the, what is it, the like the old, like was he like she like reorganizes the like the like the, yeah, the cultural center, like over like the old like items that they gave and everything, and the stories behind them. I felt like that was a really meaningful thing. And like, because a lot of times a lot of cultural heritage items from the indigenous people have been not like stolen, or they've been destroyed, or they've been put in like British museums, like, and it's, there's not much for them around anymore, because like so much has been like stolen from them. And now she's using this these new everyday items in order to like not I don't want to say the word replace. She's trying to enhance her culture and try to get it back to where it used to be through these modern items. And it tells a lot of interesting indigenous stories, and I feel like that's a really good. Like it's a really solid. Like it's not a really solid story. It's also a really like emotional story because there's a lot of different people and they're all with their different perspectives and it's great. I love it.
Yeah, I guess it's not what the atom was that mattered. Is like this. It was the story behind the atoms, and that was a very interesting concept that the shows and the writers introduced, and now it's definitely something to think about. Not only I guess in artifacts and historical things, but I guess in your everyday use. Now let's move on to episode 8.
Oh wait, do we skip episode 7 or isn't it episode 7
Sorry,
now?
yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, yeah,
Okay,
episode
it's fine.
7.
So episode 7, I really liked it. Like, it was definitely the climax of the series as far as like the A plot goes. I really liked it. I feel like maybe it suffered a bit, like just because I wasn't 100% not sold on it. Like, I don't know if like it didn't feel like enough of a climax as it should have been. It kind of felt like a bit like of an anticlimax because Terry makes his demands. The company pretty much goes, yeah, okay, sure. And then Nathan is the only one trying to oh no, you can't do this to me. He's getting all like upset and everything. And I feel like that was a bit not childish of Nathan because he is a very childish character. It's just that it wasn't as compelling as the overall narrative. As he wants his land back. He wants the land so he can turn it into like he can give more land back to the indigenous people. I feel like that was a more compelling storyline than Nathan throwing a hissy fit.
Yeah, yeah. I get. Yeah, as you said, I thought this was I get the climax of the show as well. I thought the climax was a little too early on. They could. Well, I don't think they if they'd stretch it out, it probably wouldn't even be better. But um, I guess it's just what happened afterwards. But aside from that, the I guess I was a little disappointed as well. I expected a little more because the way how they came in with the helicopters and the suits and the like serious stuff. I expected a much better, I guess, negotiation with Terry the the Rutherford Inc. But they just basically agreed to what was proposed to them. That was it. And again, it shows more of how I guess Terry is of a character. He's really for the people. He really he didn't ask for, well, initially he did ask for I guess 200 million, but nonetheless he asked for land, right? And usually for indigenous people, land is very significant for their culture, and so he realized that, and so we want this part of Rutherford Falls just for us, and I think that was very interesting, and that was a powerful move for him
Mm-hmm.
as a character.
Yeah. What did you think of episode 8?
Now, episode 8, I think this probably might have been my, well, no, episode 8, and then maybe and extends on to episode 9, were probably my favorite episodes. Yeah, probably those two, just because of this. Although obviously it dips a little bit, but I guess the new storyline that was added on was it was more intriguing than what was happening before that, right before in episode 6 and episode 7. They had they had, well, okay, we'll explain later on in episode 9, but in episode 8 was when I guess they had that set up for episode 9, with Regan, I guess not isolating, but Regan and Nathan splitting a little bit, and then they go their separate ways, cause up to this point they were glued together, and so when they were split, they discover different things for I guess for themselves, and then they handle what's happening just by themselves, and then later on it sets up for episode 9, which is probably my favorite episode in the whole show.
I mean, I kind of have the opposite thing here. None of the episodes here in the show are bad, but like I feel like this is definitely because it already climaxed in episode 7, but I feel like episode 8 like it kind of, you know, it feels a bit of like it's like stalling time almost. Like they go to a gaming conference, they don't do much there. Um, Nathan and Deidre try to like or Deidre, I don't know how to pronounce it. Deidre try to like stall for like try to like get Big Larry like to keep the statue up, and then like that's happening, and then they're trying to also set up what is it like the ye old Rutherford Village, and like I don't know, none of those really stories are compelling. It like sometimes it was a bit funny, like they're trying to make Nathan try on those all those old like costumes, and they do like they don't really care like how inaccurate it is, which is kind of funny because he's like super into it. But besides that, I feel like a lot of the stories in this what is it the storylines in this episode were kind of uncompelling, and I don't know, it didn't have the same feeling as the others did.
Okay, all right. So now let's extend to episode 9. Do you want to start us off, or do you want me to start?
I'll start off. For this one, I felt like what is it? It's like it's definitely I wouldn't. It's a good episode. It's definitely like I would call it like probably like a good solid like middle of the road episode. I really like some of the stuff that they talk about with what is it when they try to like Regan tries to get the Minneshanka artifacts from what is it the aunt's Nathan's aunt, and she wants to like display them at her cultural center, and how like and then Nathan gets mad at her like for like basically no reason, and then was it? And then eventually, and then she reveals that he's not a Rutherford, and he gets all pissed. I feel like that's a very compelling storyline, like on paper, but like in the show, Nathan kind of sometimes feels like he's acting like I know he's supposed to be a childish character, but it also feels like sometimes he's acting over childish. Like I can't, I just can't see the same Nathan and the rest of the show getting angry that she took artifacts. No, she bought the artifact took, yeah, like sure, like they belong to her. To buy the artifacts from Nathan's End. I can't see him getting mad at that. He should probably just be like, yeah, okay, yeah. Like that's I feel like the character he should have been. Instead, he's all angry. Maybe it's because he's being like forced to be in ye old Rutherford Village, but it still doesn't feel as accurate to his character.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I can see why you said that, but the reason why I actually like this episode was the the twist that it had in it. Because Nathan basically dedicated he said it. He dedicated his whole life with no sorry not he his brother said it. He dedicated his whole life on the Rutherfords. The family, the history, and basically being a Rutherford himself, right? And then when it turns out that he's not a Rutherford, he's a he's a half brother of his he's a half brother of a Rutherford from on his mom's side, and it just I guess it obviously it broke him as a character, but the like I guess the excitement of that of watching that and then having that twist on and then twist there and then later on, you know, it was really good. I just loved I guess the concept of having that twist so late in the show, and then I guess the execution was pretty good as well. You did say that he was I guess overly childish, and at times he was overly childish, and probably because of I guess comedy. They tried making it comedic some at some parts, but that definitely that suffers because it could have just been a totally serious episode, and I wouldn't be mad. It probably would have been a much better episode. It was just all drama, less comedy, and that's why I like episode 9 the most.
I mean, I don't necessarily agree that if it would make it like if it was more dramatic, it would have been better. I feel like they had to maybe try to like figure out what to do after they had to have a more concrete plan for what to do after episode 7, because it feels like kind of here again they're just kind of not like they're kind of just buying time, but whatever. Enough about that. Let's move on to episode 10. What did you think of episode 10?
Episode 10 was probably my least liked episode. Uh, this episode is more of a, I guess, a personal journey, and more often than not, when it comes to stories that are, more personal, with the character. Personally, me, I tend to not like them as much as I do, as I do about other stories, probably because I won't be able to, or I don't relate with the characters and what's happening in the story, and that's why I guess it was my least favorite character. Um, I mean, I guess it could have been. I don't know. It was an okay ending. You know, it was an okay ending to a show. If the I guess episode 10, if it was a much better episode, the overall show probably would have been a whole lot better.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think this is the show's like it may be not like the episode that I dislike the least, but I feel like it's the most meh episode of the show where it like feels like nothing happens. A lot like Nathan does go through a character journey. It just feels like a very meh plot line, and like it feels like it should have ended with a more stronger finish. You know, it should have had a big bang at the finish, but instead it just doesn't, and it kind of just like floats off. And I feel like maybe that's something maybe season 2 of the show will rectify, but for now it kind of ends weakly. Okay, I think we've talked all we can about this honestly great series. I really like it. Neil, any final thoughts before we end this episode?
We're good.
We're good? Okay. Thank you for listening to this episode of Not Film Critics. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time and enjoy, I guess. Or, I don't know, eat a snack or something. Go nuts.
Special thanks to Nicholas Bianclin. Make sure to subscribe to his YouTube channel at The End Note, or you can follow him on Instagram at endnote_music. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at not.film.critics and on Twitter at nonfilmcritics for exclusive content and news.
See ya!